Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
America's air traffic system is showing cracks, and the shutdown only widened them. Chris Edwards at the Cato Institute is here to explain why budget dependence and failed modernization make the system fragile, and why he believes a Canadian-style model could be the fix. Mr. Edwards, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You have a recent article that warns about air traffic chaos, especially related to the shutdown that we saw in November. And once again, air traffic control was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. What were the key pain points that you saw?
Well, when the federal government doesn't decide on its annual budget in the appropriations process, sometimes we get a government shutdown, as most of your listeners know. And sometimes when shutdowns happen, it affects the air traffic control system, because the air traffic control system is run as part of the Department of Transportation, as kind of a regular bureaucracy. And so we've seen this sorts of interruptions on air traffic control in previous shutdowns in 2013 and 2018. And the recent one where the government was shut down for a month and millions of American airline passengers were delayed and had their flights canceled.
The Department of Transportation is now offering $10,000 bonuses to air traffic controllers who had perfect attendance. Is pay the key issue here?
No, I think the problem is that the funding stream of our air traffic control system is the federal government budget. And I've written extensively about how other countries, such as Canada and the UK, have taken their air traffic control system and moved it out of the regular government budget and given it a dedicated funding stream. So in Canada, they set up a nonprofit corporation. They put their air traffic controllers in there, and it's funded separately by fees on airlines and airport landings. So the stream is insulated from political battles that may happen. Back in 2016, the House Transportation Committee here in the United States passed out a bill out of committee that would sort of set up a Canadian-style system where we'd set up a nonprofit corporate entity, we'd put the air traffic control in there, and we would fund that system separately from the regular government budget.
That sounds similar to the way Amtrak is run, and they've certainly had their funding challenges there. How would it work differently for air traffic control?
So Amtrak is still reliant on the federal government for money for capital investment. The way the Canadians and the British have set up their systems is that they are completely independently funded, and they for both the operating and the capital purposes. So the Canadian and British air traffic control systems are not subsidized. And which is the way I think it should be, because, aviation is an industry like any other. There's no reason why users shouldn't pay for the services. Air traffic control is a service, and I think that the cost should ultimately land on people who use the air traffic system.
You mentioned capital investment there. Certainly the FAA and Department of Transportation have spent, let's say, tens of billions of dollars trying to modernize the next-gen air traffic control, and they haven't been very successful yet. All of those funds would be passed on to passengers, right? Airport passengers. How would we get enough capital investment to really move forward in those critical functionalities?
So when you move the system to the private sector, like on the nonprofit system, like in Canada, the system, of course, raises money through fees, as we talked about it, but can also issue bonds to raise money for capital, just like private companies do. And that system has worked really well in Canada and Britain. In fact, both Canada and Britain, in some ways, their technology is more advanced than ours in air traffic control. You touched on the next-gen system. As some of your listeners may know, the Government Accountability Office, the Inspector General for the DOT, has been complaining about FAA's poor performance on its capital upgrades for years and years. In fact, for over 2 decades now. There's a long series of government reports criticizing the FAA for the excessive bureaucracy, the risk aversion. They're not getting the job done in terms of adding the advanced technology we need in our air traffic control system.
I'm speaking with Chris Edwards. He occupies the Kiltz Family Chair in Fiscal Studies at the Cato Institute. I want to explore a couple of other things about privatization with you, because you've also made the argument that the TSA screening function should be moved out of government funding. Talk us through that logic.
So the logic there, again, is partly that I'd like to get the politicians and their micromanagement out of some of these functions where we can. I mean, to go back to the air traffic controllers for a minute, the Washington Post had a nice story a few weeks ago about how we only have one training academy for air traffic controllers, and we have a shortage now on a lot of air traffic control facilities. This is partly because Congress hasn't allowed the creation of an additional training academy for air traffic controllers. It seems to me that's the sort of the problematic micromanagement you get when Congress tries to control these sort of functions. With airport screening, the idea is you decentralize the screening to individual airports. You have the Department of Transportation do safety oversight like they do now, but the actual screening would be controlled by airports. That would give airports more flexibility to meet the sort of individual demands and unique demands the airports face. And we wouldn't get sort of system-wide problems. We wouldn't get these system-wide mistakes. We'd get different experiences in the airports. The airports could learn from each other. The way Canada does it is they contract out their services to big expert security agencies, and many European countries do this too. The British do this, and that system works well as also.
What does the airline industry have to say about these proposals to privatize?
Well, back in 2016, the airlines, all of them except Delta, actually supported the privatization plan passed through the House Transportation Committee. So Delta was the outlier there. Most airlines were on board with privatization back then. I think that the airlines, should rethink now that we've had another government shutdown. I worry that with the budget battles in Washington are going to get bigger and nastier. Unfortunately, in coming years, because deficits and debt are going to keep growing, there's going to be a lot of pressure to cut spending. So I think we need the airlines, the Air Traffic Controllers Union and the other stakeholders need to rethink the funding for air traffic control, because I think the budget battles are going to get worse in Washington.
So if the airlines support privatization, what are the biggest political obstacles that you see that are keeping it from happening?
Well, unfortunately, in the American political system, you only sort of need, one sort of veto point, and a whole reform plan can go down. So back in 2016, the House Transportation Committee passed this reform bill through, but the Senate Transportation Committee wasn't too excited about it. Back then, President Trump in his first term supported the plan. His transportation secretary, Alan Chow, supported it. And the Air Traffic Controllers Union supported this privatization back in 2016 as well, because again, they're concerned about stable funding. And they looked at the Canadian system and they could see that it works very well. Indeed, back then in 2016, members of Congress went up to Canada, looked at the system, and so did our Air Traffic Controllers Union. They all thought it worked very well and looked good, and that was sort of the basis for that reform bill. Today, I think we've had another government shutdown that was very damaging. Millions of passengers were inconvenienced. The economy lost money from the shutdown. I think this is time, it's time now for Congress to rethink the structure of our air traffic control system.
Air traffic control is really a global industry. I mean, you get on a plane in Dallas and you fly to Frankfurt, or in Seattle and you fly to Beijing. What are our international partners in air traffic control saying about the U.S. system and how they would like it to be improved?
Well, look, the U.S. system, works well. I don't think we're at the leading edge of technology anymore, but it does work well. We have a giant system, but I worry about the future. The skies are getting more crowded all the time. Aviation demand is going up. The skies are getting more congested. Our technology is falling behind. We hear that from the GAO consistently year after year. So we're not at the crunch point yet, but I worry we've got to invest more and move that technology ahead to make progress. I mean, just to give you one example on that, The UK and Canada are moving ahead with what are called remote towers. These are, rather than the traditional towers you see at airports where you have the controllers up top looking at the airfields visually, the new idea is you put a bunch of sort of fancy technology and cameras with different sort of visual wavelengths looking at airports, and you and have the controllers looking at the runways on big screens with all kinds of advanced technology. These systems save money and they're safer. And London City Airport now has a system like this in place, and Canada's moving ahead with this as well. That's the type of technology that where the FAA has been really hesitant. I think because it's a government agency, frankly, it's a little too risk averse. So I think by opening up air traffic control, we get more entrepreneurs in and more innovation. And just the last point on that is, we've seen this with NASA, or the space agency, that by opening up a little bit and letting entrepreneurs like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos get in there with new ideas, new ways of doing things, I think it's been very beneficial for America's space agency. So I'd like that same sort of innovation in air traffic control.
I've been speaking with Chris Edwards. He is occupying the Kiltz Family Chair in Fiscal Studies at the Cato Institute. Thanks so much for bringing this argument actually to our attention.
Thank you.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.